Am I the asshole for exposing my parents' favoritism? My parents have always favored my younger brother. I was by no means in love, but it was blatantly obvious who they cared about more. I worked a part-time job to get my first car, but my brother got one as a present. It wasn't new, but much newer than my car. It was the same with everything else, like clothes, video games, and cell phones. I'm 18 and taking a gap year before community college to work a full-time job and save money for tuition. But a while back, I heard my parents talking about how much they were going to pay for my brother's tuition. I secretly recorded the conversation, then came out asking my parents why they were going to pay for my brother's college but not mine. They didn't notice I was recording and said that my brother needs more help. I asked how. I asked my parents why they were going to pay for my brother's college but not mine. They didn't notice I was recording and just said that my brother needs more help. I asked how when I wasn't getting any sort of scholarship and he likely wouldn't either. Then I asked about why things have always been this way. My father told me perhaps it's time I moved out because they're sick of keeping a roof over my head. I mentioned I pay rent, but they didn't care. In a fit of rage, I uploaded the video to 2 different social medias. Hours later, my dad screamed at me about how I made them look bad. My grandparents were appalled and came to visit the next day. They told my parents off and mentioned that they've been sending them money to help with family expenses for years. My brother sided with the family, and my parents gave me an apology that sounded forced.
Am I the asshole for moving out of my parents' house after they expected me to pay rent for my room?
Yeah. What a dick.
You thought you wouldn't have to pay rent, dude?
This ain't a free fucking country. Wait, hang on.
Before my 18th birthday, over a month ago, my parents started talking about how they expect me to pay for rent, then half of the bills if I expected to stay there.
Half of the bills?
That's insane.
That wasn't the problem. The issue was they were expecting me to pay more than $1,300 a month for my tiny-ass room that I share with my little brother. Not including half of the bills that they expected me to pay.
$1,300 plus half the bills?
Yes.
I want to know what the fucking, housing market is in this area, because that's an insane price.
Most apartments in our city are around that range, but that's for the whole ass apartment, not a single bedroom, plus sharing a space with everyone else. Most of my paycheck would just be going to that then. I don't have a problem with helping with bills and paying for my room if they made the rent to be lower. They said that's how much they agreed on, so that's what I'd have to pay if I want to keep staying there.
That's what the parents agreed on, not the kid.
Correct.
That makes sense.
The parents are just practicing to be slumlords.
Yeah, they're getting you ready for the real world.
I was going to say, maybe they're preparing him for future slumlords.
Yeah, okay. Listen, son, it's going to happen out there. I'd rather it happen under our own house.
Maybe I'd make a buck.
If you're going to get taken advantage of, I want it to be under my roof.
So I said fine, and I talked to one of my friends I already knew had his own place but was looking for a roommate. I ended up going with him, and he added me to the lease. My own room and bathroom, plus the total for rent and my half of the bills, is way less than the rent by itself that my parents expected me to pay. But the thing is, they're super mad at me for leaving. My mom ignored me when I moved out, and my dad kept saying how he was disappointed in me.
Why? What?
For a while, they were hoping to rely on me with helping out with their mortgage payments on the house, also with the bills. So now that I've chosen to leave and said, my dad says I'm going to leave them really struggling, and he can't believe I decided to be selfish instead of helping my family out.
These parents are nuts.
Yeah.
This dude's not the asshole, but these parents they're bonkers.
Storytime about the time I invited a Tinder date over to my house and accidentally met his mother. Like many other unfortunate souls, my non-existent dating life has me turning to the dating apps. This particular one is from Tinder. I'd been chatting with this guy for a few days and everything was going swimmingly. We had so much in common and we were looking for the same things. His pictures were cute and he didn't live too far away. All seemed well. I invited him over to grill out some burgers in my backyard. He asked if he could bring anything, and I said sure, bring some bacon for the burgers. He agreed and said he'd be over soon. Given his distance, I expected him to be over in 15 minutes. I started to grill and season the burgers. Half an hour later, he messaged me and said, I've driven by a couple times and chickened out. Are you sure you want me to come over? Maybe a red flag, but I chalked it up to nerves and just said, come on, I'm hungry. So this haggard-looking guy shows up, much different than his Cedric picture. That's alright, I can move past that. From the moment he walked up, I kid you not, he did not take a breath. Within the first 5 minutes, I knew his life story from his aunt who hated their grandma to his father who likes to collect taxidermy. Not a single breath. Again, I figured he was just nervous. I put the burgers on, and when they're ready, he pulls out a Ziploc bag from his pocket with 2 pieces of bacon in it. He puts them on only his burger. Okay. We sit down at the patio table and start eating. I finish my burger before he even started his. He did not stop talking the entire time. When we sit down, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a vial. He must have noticed me staring at it, flipping between if he was about to snort something strange or build some sand art. He said, "Oh," all super casual, "I'd like to introduce you to my mother." I just stared at him for what felt like an eternity. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or run. He said, "I like to bring her to any important event in my life. She also has ashes in this necklace I'm wearing, and this ring I have on, and this half-sleeve tattoo is for her." Now, mind you, I've lost too many people close to me, and I do not judge people based on their grief cycles. We all cope differently, and I respect that. But homeboy brought a vial of his mother's ashes and set them on the table for our first date. I simply could not. He finally finished his burger, and I made some excuse about having to clock in and finish some work at 9:30 p.m. He texted me before he even got to his car and told me, "My mother really liked you. I can't wait to see you again." I told him that I didn't feel a connection to him or his mother.
Am I the a-hole for getting upset my husband left me at home to go clubbing with a friend I hate on his birthday? My husband's birthday was coming up. He and I had made plans to celebrate at home together. I went out earlier in the day to spend a few $100s on fancy food and an expensive alcoholic beverage as a treat. While I was out finalizing plans for delivery of said beverage, he texted to say an old friend of his wanted him to come out that night to go drinking. I seriously dislike this friend, and the friend, while never directly causing an issue, has been the source of encouragement for my husband to drive drunk, get hammered at the club, and so on. I say I absolutely don't want to do that, and that I had plans for us, but didn't want to spoil the surprise just yet, so I didn't tell him how much effort or expense had gone into it. By the time I got home, he was out pre-gaming and upset I didn't want to spend his birthday with him and the friend at the club. When he got home at 4 a.m. after sleeping off some of the drunk under an overpass in his car, I was furious and we got into a shouting match. He said it was my fault I got left behind because I was invited. I was angry at him because I sat at home with his gifts all night, not hearing from him and seeing the social media updates from his friend partying up at the club. So am I the a-hole?
Story time about how I ghosted my boyfriend of 5 years.
I know that sounds so bad, but he was a thief, a liar, and a cheater. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Like I said, my boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years. We met in college and were basically inseparable for the first 2 years. On our 3rd year of dating, I started working as a personal assistant for a big celebrity in LA. This meant I had to move to LA. You see, we lived in Texas at the time. Well, things got really bad after I moved. He wouldn't take my phone calls, he would totally ignore my text messages, and he would go out all the time. For the first few months, I tried to keep the peace so I wouldn't say anything, but eventually it got to the point where we wouldn't speak for an entire week. Luckily, my best friend still lived in Texas, so I had her follow him around for 2 days. And you'll never guess what she found. Shout out to my bestie. She showed up to his apartment early in the morning and waited for him to go to work, which he did. When he was done with work, she went back to his job to follow him back home. This is when she told me that he actually went to some girl's house. He didn't end up going home at all that day. This man actually spent the night at some girl's house. The whole time I was trying to call him and text him, and he did not take my phone calls. My best friend even took pictures of his car in this girl's driveway. Since I had this girl's address, I looked her up on the internet. I even found out her phone number because I paid some service online. And of course, I found her Instagram account. She had been posting on her story about hanging out with some guy. But the thing is, she didn't show the guy's face. She only showed his hand. Guess what? I recognize his hand in the picture because it has a tattoo on his pinky. So of course, I took screenshots. Later that day, my best friend followed him to a bar. At this bar, he met up with another girl. Unfortunately, I didn't have any information about this girl. I just knew that she drove a green car. My best friend followed him again the following day. He went to the beach, ran some errands, and then met up with another girl. Yes, we have 3 girls in 2 days. This girl was different because this girl was a friend of mine when I lived in Texas. And I knew she always had a crush on him, but she could never admit it. They went out to dinner and then back to her place. And again, my best friend sent me pictures of everything, so I had all the receipts. Side note, I think of my best friend spying on him and it makes me laugh. I hope you can all say you have best friends that are like that. So here's what I did. I got on the first flight back to Texas and did not tell my boyfriend that I was showing up at his apartment the following day. But guess what I find in his bed? My lying, cheating boyfriend had given me a key to his apartment. So I unlock the apartment and make my way towards his bedroom, really quietly. When I walk into his bedroom, I find him curled up in his bed with another girl. He's holding her in his arms, totally fast asleep. And the worst part is, I recognize the girl that was with him. It was one of the girls who I used to be friends with in Texas. I walked backwards and closed the door behind me. That's when I just started to cry. I couldn't believe that he had done this to me. While I was working my butt off in LA trying to make a future for us, he was in Texas dating 3 women at once. No wonder he never picked up my phone calls or even texted me back. So here's what I did. I had printed out all the receipts I had, all the pictures of him hanging out with other girls that my best friend took while she was spying on him. I laid out all the pictures on his kitchen counter, and I left him a letter too. I told him in the letter that I could never forgive him and for him to never contact me again. Oh yeah, and that I wanted him to pay me back the $3,000 he owed me. You see, when we first started dating, he needed a loan for his car. I helped him out and gave him $3,000, which he promised to pay me. Obviously, we dated for 5 years and I never saw any of that money. So aside from him being a cheater and a liar, he was a thief. I left the note and the cards and left his apartment. I went to my parents' house and stayed with him for the weekend. Of course, my ex, showed up to my parents' house and begged to talk to me. My father told him to leave me alone and to never speak to me again. My dad told him that when he was ready to pay him the money. That made me laugh. I was totally crushed. I blocked him on everything, even through email. Of course, he got on someone else's phone and tried to contact me that way, but I never replied. He sends me emails every now and then and promises to pay me the money back. A few days ago, he sent me a picture of an engagement ring. He keeps telling me that I'm the best thing that he's ever had, and that he's sorry and blah blah blah. I kind of want to reply to him, but I know that that's a bad idea, right? Or should I just talk to him and see what he has to say? What do you guys think?
Am I the asshole for laughing when my family told me bad news about my sister? So my sister has always been the golden child in my dad's eyes. My parents adopted me thinking that they wouldn't have biological parents. They split when I was 10 and my father went on to have my sister. I'll give her this. She was very intelligent with basically straight A's based on my dad's bragging. Well, my dad expected her to be a doctor or something like that. Very high expectations. My dad for the past year has been paying her rent while she goes to college, even though she works. I called my dad yesterday when he let me know how disappointed he was in my sister. It turns out she's pregnant and has no immediate plans on continuing with her education. And the cherry on top? The father of the baby is only 3 years younger than me. Now, I'm not happy about my sister's situation. I do not approve of her relationship. Well, I laughed when I found out, because the pressure my father has put on her for the past 19 years, with cheerleading, track, countless diets to keep her skinny, making her give up her dream of being a vet, finally made her crack. And I find it hilarious that he doesn't see that he did it to her, and he thinks he has the right to say he's disappointed. My father, however, took this as me laughing at my sister. But when I explained no, I'm laughing at him, it made things so much worse. My stepmother has been texting me non-stop about how I hurt my father, how he just wanted to vent, and as a family, I should support and respect him, and even if I didn't, it was just a genuinely dickish move to laugh. Am I the arsehole? Would I be the arsehole if I got my little sister's college scholarship revoked? I, 21 male, have been an avid writer my entire life. I have written 3 full-length novels that I'm almost perpetually reworking, and a book of short stories all set within the same universe. I've been working on this universe and the characters within it since I was 13, and it is all very personal to me. This week, I found out that my younger sister, 17 female, won a massive scholarship by submitting one of my short stories. I would have been upset regardless of which story she'd taken, but she happened to pick one based around my experience feeling othered because of my autism. My sister is not autistic, and has actually bullied me for my autistic traits in the past, so the fact that this was the story she picked to steal from me almost feels like an attack. In addition to submitting the story, she also had to write about what inspired her to write the piece, and even thinking about what she must have made up makes my blood boil. My parents are currently struggling for money, and this scholarship would pay for almost her entire first year. Both my parents know what my sister did, and they have both asked me to just let it slide, because my sister having this scholarship is helping our family out a lot. They were also worried that the school my sister has been accepted to might find out and rescind her admission. They are both using the excuse that she is just a little girl who made a dumb mistake, and that it would be petty and over the top for me, an adult man, to hurt her future over it. I don't want to hurt my parents financially. I don't even really want to hurt my sister, but I don't want her to have this scholarship. I have all the proof that she is not the real author of the story, but would I be the arsehole if I actually sent it in? Should I just let it go for the benefit of my family?
Would I be wrong for leaving after 6.5 years with no proposal in sight? I, 25 female, have been with my partner, 29 male, for 6.5 years. I'm getting fed up with the fact that we haven't gotten married yet. I am ready for the next chapter of our lives and just feel stuck. I can see why you may be thinking I'm shitty. I would too with that heading, but hear me out. We've been together 6.5 years, are financially stable, own a home together for 4 years, and have a dog together. He told me 3 years ago that he was ready, and a proposal still hasn't happened. We've been through a lot together and have grown together. We went through my brain tumor diagnosis, my grandma who raised me passing, his grandpa's passing, and more. He just tells me to be patient, but he won't give me a reason as to why we are waiting. When I've asked him about it, he always tells me that there's nothing holding him back from getting married. He says that he wants the same thing as me. He swears that it's going to happen for us and even told me he had something planned before COVID hit. But I know by his own admittance that it wasn't more than just an idea. He knows marriage is very important to me, which he has always said he's on board for. He also tells me that he'd say no to a proposal from me because he'd be hurt I took the opportunity away from him. I feel like my needs are being dismissed without even being given a reason. If he would communicate a concern, I'd be more understanding, but this just feels ridiculous. The more time that passes, the more frustrated I become. I never ever want to be that woman to give an ultimatum, but I can't wait around forever if it isn't going to happen. I know that sounds terrible, but if we weren't on the same page, we both need to be able to find that person with the same goals, wants, and needs in life, right? So, would I be wrong for leaving him?